So what advice do you have for parents who are in the slog of trying to do this on their own? Because so many have to do it on their own right now because of the pandemic, because of wait lists, because they don't have access.
I mean, my primary advice is inform and educate yourselves. I really believe that knowledge is power. I believe that knowledge is really the key to being able to support, a loved one with an eating disorder. There's so much on the internet. I mean, I kind of committed for a long period of time to either watch one video a day or read one article a day. And it's important to know where the reliable sources are. And I'm not going to start telling you what are and what are not reliable sources, but there are some which are more reliable and some which are less current and science-based. But I think it's really, really important for parents to educate themselves, to really know, what eating disorders are, to really understand what they do to your child's brain, to understand how to treat them, to understand the role of nutrition and how it's so important to feed your child's brain, and how that really is the key, to leading your child toward recovery. Because, in our case, it was very much the philosophy of let's go with the psychological route, and then, we'll catch up on the food. And intuitively, I knew that was wrong. I could feel it was wrong. And, so the other point, which brings me to trust your intuition. I mean, I trusted my intuition too late. I mean, it took me a long time to be able to trust my intuition because I was just so eviscerated by, this blame and, kind of being told that, I caused this, and being told that I was just a mother. I mean, if I could tell you how many times I heard we're the experts and you're the mother. And it took me a long time to realize, no, actually, you're not the expert on my child. You may be an expert on eating disorders, but you're not an expert on my child. I am an expert on my child. And you can't treat my child without listening to what I have to say.
I like to remind parents we're experts in eating disorders. That's it. That's it. You're experts in your child. You have literally committed your life to being an expert in your child. I can turn anyone into an eating disorder expert. I want to say it's not that hard, right? It's a set of information that people need to know. This isn't rocket science. Becoming an expert in someone else's child, truly impossible. You didn't live with them. You didn't change their diapers. You haven't watched them go through puberty or how they navigate their relationships with their siblings. You haven't lived with them day in and day out. It's just impossible. So I don't know, when in doubt, the easiest path is always best, right? It is so much easier to turn parents into eating disorder experts than it is for me to become an expert in someone else's child. Certainly no one else could be an expert in my child. And I really want parents to digest that and own that you're hearing advice from lots of different people, but you can completely become an eating disorder expert. And Carrie Arnold's book, also we have to mention Lauren Mulheim's book, I think is just absolutely fantastic. And a lot of the resources on F.E.A.S.T can turn you into an eating disorder expert pretty quickly. So let's talk about some of the tactical things people can do, especially if they're waiting for treatment, or even if their child's engaged in treatment. That doesn't, the parents are essential, whether they're in treatment or not in treatment. So what are some of the things that family members can do? Some, I guess, practical or tactical things that family members should do. I think you alluded to one of them, which is nourishment before the psychological things. One aspect of it is that without regular nutrition, anxiety and depression are significantly higher, and the eating disorder is significantly stronger. So many eating disorder symptoms are symptoms of malnutrition or not getting the proper nutrients or messing with your eating and digestive system. So you actually have to eat before you want to eat. And that burden really falls on families. It's hard to do that. So would love to hear what other practical advice you have for families.
So I think it's really important for parents to learn distress tolerance, because this is really hard. You have to tolerate a lot of distress from your child that creates a lot of distress within yourself. And, I've heard it likened to your child's 2 and throws a tantrum in the store, right? So how do you deal with it? You deal with it. You learn how to deal with it. You learn how to engage with your child. You learn, how to de-escalate the situation. And I feel like it's very similar here, except it's much scarier, because sometimes your child can be stronger than you and bigger than you and certainly angrier than you. And violent and situations that you never, ever thought this child would be in. So, you have to, distress tolerance, I think, also helps you accept a new reality, and just deal with it, because this is a whole new reality for you. And also, I think it's really important as a kind of like, not as a strategy, but as a perspective, is to realize that this is a rainstorm, it'll pass. Because when you're in it, you feel like, oh my God, it is never going to stop pouring. It is never going to stop storming. The sun is never going to come out. And I try really hard to tell parents it will. I promise it will. You just have to get through it. And, there's, unfortunately, the only way through is through. And this is kind of what you were alluding to also, is kind of like, there's no magic pill, there's no magic wand, there's no magic anything. Nobody can do it for you. No one can do it for your child. Even if you send your child to a residential treatment center, you're not absolved, you're not out of the picture. Temporarily, someone else is taking over some of your role as a parent, in the feeding process, but then your child's going to come home and you're going to have to pick it up again. So, parents sometimes have this illusion of well, maybe if I send my child away, and again, it's not from a selfish point of view. It's from I want to give my child what she or he needs, and at home, I can't do it. I failed. I can't do it. I need to send them somewhere for a higher level of care. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, our kids are our kids, and they belong in our home, and they return to our home. And, I also think that as a strategy, parents have to find support, whether it's support, F.E.A.S.T, it's an organization by parents for parents. I mean, we specialize in support, and there's something really unique about getting support from someone who's been in your shoes. And also the things that parents say on the F.E.A.S.T forum are very personal. I mean, it's funny to say they're personal because it's public to the degree that it's on Facebook, or it's a public forum that people can join who are other caregivers. But, parents will verbalize things like, I can't stand my child. I want to run away. I can't take this anymore. And these are deeply personal things that you can't say to somebody who doesn't understand, because they would judge you and they would think that you're a horrible parent. But somebody who's been in your shoes knows that feeling of, I just want to walk out the door and take my car keys and go somewhere else. And we all have been in that moment, and it makes you feel like a horrible parent. So if you're validated by, 100 other parents who say, been there, done that, got through it, that is what parents need.
Can't say enough good things about F.E.A.S.T and how every family I've met, I've said to F.E.A.S.T. And so F.E.A.S.T is just this plethora of, it's two things. It's both information and education, and it's community together. And what I've watched a lot of families who've been to 2, 3 treatment centers, and then they find out about F.E.A.S.T. And I watch them go through this set of emotions. Like the first emotion is just relief and gratitude. Like, oh, like this is what I've been looking for. But then it's usually followed by anger. Like, why did I have to find this on my own? Why 2 years into my journey am I just finding this, or into our family's journey? So the sooner all of us can get people to F.E.A.S.T to be part of the education and part of the community, I think the better.
Find your support in terms of, find your support in terms of other parents who can support you, but also in terms of who can make your life easier. You're dealing with a crisis right now, and you shouldn't be driving carpools, and you shouldn't be going to the grocery store, and you shouldn't be doing all these little tasks, work tasks or whatever it is. Like, you should have people in your circle, whether it's friends or family, who can be requested to, help you. And you shouldn't be embarrassed to ask for help. It is natural. It is normal to ask for help, and it's in everyone's best benefit. And your friends want to help you. They really do. They don't know what to do. They look at you, they see you're struggling. They don't know what to do. Give them something to do, and it'll make your life so much easier. You have to, we call it clear the decks. You have to drop all your obligations. You have to really kind of just dedicate everything toward restoring your child's health. And that means that you need help, because many people have other children, they have work responsibilities, they have community responsibilities. So you basically really have to find people who can support you in that way and kind of take on these things that you can't do right now. It's the well-being of your entire family. And I think that it takes precedence over, I'm worried people might know. You know what? Eventually people will know. And you know what? If people know, then that reduces the stigma. The more people
Yes.
know about eating disorders, the more it's kind of like a thing. Oh yeah, my daughter has an eating disorder. It becomes much less stigmatized. It becomes more accepted. It becomes more understood. And that understood part to me is really important, that people understand what eating disorders are. So, those are just things off the top of my head that I can think of to offer parents to get through, the worst of the crisis.